the rule doesn't mean that you should proceed because, quote unquote, they told you so. It is your responsibility to not be ignorant. It is your responsibility to understand what's allowed and what's not.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
Good day, everyone. Dustin Harris, once again hanging out in the podcast chair. And what a nice chair it is, by the way. I want to tell you a quick story this morning about something that occurred in my office that may have an effect upon your office. And I want to share with you a little information about extraordinary assumptions, something that we use constantly. And the question on the table is, should we be? I want to pause here, of course, to remind you that we are sponsored by 3 great companies, one of them being DataMaster. DataMaster, of course, saving you about 45 minutes on every single stinking report that you work on. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com. Again, it's DataMaster, USA is in the United States of America.com. We're sponsored by Alamode. Alamode, of course, is the software that will save you time, save you money, save you from doing a lot of stuff that you would normally do with other software. It is the most efficient software out there, and you can find it by picking up the phone and calling them at 800-ALAMODE, very easy to remember, 800-ALAMODE, or, of course, alamode.com. Finally, sponsored by Working RE Magazine. Working RE is where I go to get a great deal of information about my chosen profession. That is appraisal, valuation. Check them out. Go to workingre.com. Again, it's workingre.com. All right, folks, I want to share with you an experience that we had just last week. Of course, we're in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, the worldwide pandemic, and lots of changes going on. Of course, we've talked about them extensively here on the microphone, and I've tried to share with you the most updated information that I can find. Of course, there's been some confusion. I've probably had some missteps along the way. Hopefully, there won't be any today, but I think all of us are trying to grapple with what exactly needs to be done with this or what exactly needs to be done with that. What's the proper way of doing things? And frankly, I give my staff, I give each of you, I give myself a pass right now. We're doing the best we can. That being said, we need to be so careful, and I've talked about it here before. Folks, this current environment that we find ourselves in is ripe with confusion, and it's ripe with the potential of buybacks and finger pointing and challenges down the road. So, despite the fact that we are busy, despite the fact that we are seeing record-breaking months, despite the fact that you seem to find something new every single day when it comes to the GSEs and the directions and our clients and the ways we do things. And if you do a lot of private work, there's a lot changing with that as well. We've made a lot of corporate changes here in our office and are doing things much differently now than we did, say, a couple of months ago. And with these changes comes the opportunity for mistakes. And folks, you've got to be so careful. Now, again, mistakes are going to be made. Hopefully they are not to the extent that they're going to cause you major difficulty, but we've got to slow down. We've got to cross our T's. We've got to dot our I's. And most importantly, we need to know what's right and what's wrong. It's one thing to make missteps because there's so much confusion out there, but it's quite another thing to make missteps because we're simply ignorant. We don't know what is right and what is wrong. And again, I don't always get it right. I don't always get it wrong, thankfully, but we try. We try to do the best we can, and today I want to share with you some information that I believe to be right, but this is a great opportunity to start the discussion. And as you always know, as I continue to remind you, this microphone and this format, this podcast, sure, you're probably driving down the road right now, and you're screaming at your microphone when I get it wrong, but scream at me personally, really. I mean, I'm serious. That is an invitation for you that when you get back home, that you get on your computer and you can go to my website, theappraisercoach.com. You simply click on the podcast link and click on the comments section, and I would love to hear your feedback. I, folks, am teachable. And if I get it wrong, I get it wrong. I'm not a USPAP instructor. I'm certainly not a lawyer. I don't sit on a state board. Okay, I'm just a bald, fat guy with a microphone trying to do the best he can with the information that's coming at him. Though, I will say this to my defense. I do spend a great deal of time trying to get it right. I do spend probably an extraordinary amount of time reading legalese, trying to understand, reading the FAQs that come with them, and talking to peeps across the nation and trying to get it right. So I think the information that I put out there is reasonable. I think the information that I put out there is mostly right, but I love to be taught. I don't consider it a negative criticism when you reach out and say, Dustin, I think you got it wrong. Now, there's a proper way to do it. I don't like to be called I won't say it here on the microphone, and I've been called worse. But please, let's have a conversation. Let's figure it out together. All right, let me tell you a quick story, and it will lead us into the discussion today. Last week, I got a desktop appraisal, a COVID-19 desktop. This normally, I think, would have been just a regular 1004, but because of the pandemic that we find ourselves in and the exceptions that the GSEs have given us, this was ordered as a 1004 desktop, okay? That means we are not asked to go in the property. Now, with these desktops, and this really gets to the heart of the matter today, we are required by USPAP. Folks, USPAP still applies through the pandemic. Nothing has been suspended. This is not martial law, right? You still have to follow USPAP. You still have to understand them and know them. Okay, hopefully you've had your update class recently and you know the rules and the regulations, the ethics, the moral standards that we hold ourselves to. It is required that you still follow USPAP, the Uniform Standard of Professional Appraisal Practices. And part of those, and I don't have chapter and verse, I don't have my good friend Tim Anderson on today. He would know the exact chapter and the exact verse and probably could quote it from memory. Okay, I'm simply going to paraphrase it and ask you to find it yourselves. And again, if I am wrong, if I'm paraphrasing incorrectly, let me know. But there is a rule and regulation through USPAP that requires that we have credible data, that we cannot make opinions and conclusions based on incredible data, meaning uncredible data, meaning not credible data. We have to have credible data. Well, Dustin, what does that mean? If they order a desktop, we're not going inside the property. That is exactly right. Let me finish the story. We started doing our research. First of all, the homeowner refused to do the walkthrough tool. We sent them the a-la-mode walkthrough tool. The a-la-mode walkthrough tool allows, I can't remember what it's called, the observation tool or observation assistant, something like that. It's a great tool. It's free to a-la-mode users, and you send out the link. They walk through the property. They all the photos are geocoded. We know we're at the right property. We know it's on a certain date. And they take pictures, and they make comments, and they give us notes, and we have a pretty good feel. Honestly, it's a pretty good tool. I know there's a lot of appraisers out there that are very leery of that tool. I get it. I have some concerns myself, but I'm telling you, folks, it's a pretty good tool. We've been using it extensively. That and the A-Now tool, they're very similar, and they work pretty good. But the homeowner refused to do. In fact, the homeowner said, "Do I get paid to do your job?" That's literally what she told my assistant. "Do I get paid to do your job?" When we were asked to send out, or when we sent out the link and asked her to do a quick walk through her house and take some photos. And we said, well, no, but we would like to get the most up-to-date information that we possibly could. And we're trying to keep you and us safe. And the client has requested that we don't do a walkthrough. And she said, well, I don't want you doing a walkthrough either. And I said, well, okay, there we go. I'm glad we're all on the same page. But she refused to use the tool. And okay, that's fine. Actually, the whole story is she said she finally relented and said, I will use it. But we waited 3 days and she never got it back to us. And when we followed up, she got quite angry at us. That's the whole story. Okay, fine. Is there other credible data available? That's the next question. So we went to the county. And by the way, she lives in a county that is quite sparse when it comes to online information. We were able to get square footage. We were able to get room count. We were able to get lot size, legal description, year built, some very, very basic information. No amenities were listed. There was no sketch. Again, it's just a number. 1923 is the square foot. Okay, great. We went to the MLS. A lot of times we can find an old MLS or even a recent MLS. I love recent MLS. When we're doing these for purchases and there's people in the property and we can't do a walkthrough, I love when we have recent interior and exterior photos. That helps with the quote-unquote credibility of the report. But guess what? On this one, it did not exist. We looked at our files. Sometimes we've been appraising for 24 years in this area. Have we done a previous report? And we looked back and we could not find a previous report. By the way, a-la-mode, speaking of a great company, has a great search feature. And it's pretty easy to find reports that I've done in the past. In this case, there were none. Okay, what do we do from here? Well, I'll tell you what we did. We picked up the phone. We called the AMC in question, the one that gave us the assignment, and we explained the situation. And they asked us, I kid you not, to proceed. Okay. Now, to my assistant's credit, she's not a USPAP expert either. She said, let me talk to the appraiser and I'll get back to you, which she did. And I said to her, we can't proceed unless we know what's there. We have no clue. We're doing a desktop. First of all, we're not even driving past the property. Now, I guess we could for a desktop. That's a choice that we can make. But even then, do we know the interior condition of the home? And the answer is no. Do we know the quality of the home? The answer is no. Well, Dustin, can't you just assume that? Can't you drive past the property, look at the exterior, and assume that the interior is the same condition as the exterior? Folks. Okay, let's talk about this word, extraordinary assumption, and that's really the crux of the matter today. Now, I directed my assistant to go back to the AMC and turn down the assignment. Now, that's not hard to do for us right now. I'm not going to say it was a big sacrifice. We are plenty busy, and quote-unquote losing an order was not really on my radar. Oh, well, right? Oh, you mean I have more time to work on these other maybe higher-paying assignments? Okay, that's fine. Now, that being said, we were pressured and pushed when we turned down the assignment. They asked us why we were turning down the assignment. We told them we could not get credible information about the interior. They asked us to make an assumption. In fact, they used the term extraordinary assumption. Now, folks, this is a well-known AMC. Now, this individual maybe doesn't represent the AMC, right? We've had pretty good luck. I would call this a B-plus client, right? We've had pretty good experiences with this client in the past. But this was not a good experience. At this point, I got on the phone with the AMC. Rather than using a middleman, using my assistant, I got on the phone and I very professionally, very calmly, and I would highly encourage that this is the way you treat your clients. I see a lot of stuff being posted on social media about the way that they told this AMC to take a hike. Okay, I don't know if that really happened, but okay, for you, that's fine. I don't treat my clients that way. I got on the phone and I said, hey, listen, I understand where you're coming from. I understand you want to get this done. I understand we've got the pandemic. There's a lot of confusion out there. But what there's not confusion over is USPAP, and USPAP requires that we have credible data. USPAP requires that we know at least a good source for the interior condition, quality, amenities, that kind of thing. And we just don't here. We have not been able to get the homeowner, the point of contact, to send us back any information. We have limited data from the county. We have no MLS. We have no prior report. We really have nowhere else to go to find, quote unquote, credible data, and I've got to turn down this assignment. She repeated to me what she had repeated to my assistant, that we could use an extraordinary assumption. And I said, is this for a GSE? I knew it was, but I'm trying to make a point here. And she said, well, it's on a Fannie Mae form. And I said, then we can't do it. My understanding of USPAP, my understanding is that extraordinary assumptions can be used when we're talking about USPAP. When we're talking about the Fannie Mae selling guide, those cannot be used unless you want to do the report subject to, which I know you don't want. You don't want that box checked. Now, folks, let me just clarify a couple of things here as of my understanding. When we are talking about GSE work, extraordinary assumptions simply are not allowed unless you do them subject to, which means at some point they need to be confirmed, and it usually has to happen before closing. When you do something subject to, you're going to have to do a final and wrap that up and tie it with a bow before they can close out the loan. This would not happen. Now, in this case, I might have pushed this and said, well, listen, we can do it subject to getting the photos and the information from the homeowner. But really, folks, what good is that? I might end up doing two different appraisals. If I do it subject to it being an average condition and it comes back in a good condition, guess what? I scrap all the comps and start over. I don't want to do that. Folks, you cannot just assume that the home is in average condition and move forward. We have never been able to do that, pandemic or not. Well, Dustin, what about drive-bys? Don't you make assumptions on drive-bys? Yeah, if you have credible information to back it up. You can't just make an assumption because you lick your finger, stick it in the air, and think, I guess it's probably not been an updated, remodeled interior. Well, Dustin, but the 2055 doesn't have interior information there. Right. It doesn't. Doesn't change the outcome. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Folks, it doesn't change how you perform these appraisals. You cannot, according to the GSEs. And folks, if you have not at least skimmed through the selling guide, the Fannie Mae selling guide recently, do it. There's information in there that we need to know because it has to do with the scope of work. Well, Dustin, Fannie Mae isn't used. I get it, folks. I get it. I'm just trying to help here. I'm just trying to keep you out of trouble. Folks, you don't want buybacks. You don't want your appraisals down the road 3, 5, 10 years from now being questioned about some crash in the market that might have happened, and we start pointing fingers. Fannie Mae starts pointing at the lender starts pointing at the appraiser, and all of a sudden you're defending a report from years back. Folks, I'm telling you, it'll happen. To what degree? It happens all the time. With the pandemic, it's only going to be increased. We need to protect ourselves. We need to do what's right. Okay? Now, listen, GSEs are ultimately the client if you're using a Fannie Mae form. Okay? It may or may not be sold, but it's pretty good likelihood that it will be. And we need to understand the limitations. And just because some individual who's doing the best she can. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. She's not had the education experience that appraisers have had. But folks, this is where we need to be appraisers and professionals and help people understand, right? If a client comes to an attorney and asks them to break the law because they don't know and they're ignorant about what the law is, it is the attorney's responsibility to stand up and say, I understand that would seem to be in your best interest, but trust me, I can't do that. It's against the law, and my bar association license is on the line here. Folks, it is no different with appraisers. If we are asked to do something that we should not be doing, there is a line that we need to step up and say, I can't do that. I'm sorry. Now, we can do it in a kind, professional way, but we need to do it. So what do we do? Dustin, what do you do when you can't find credible information? I'm going to give you the answer when we come back from the break. First, I want to pause here. Remind you that we are sponsored by 3 great companies. One of them I've talked about exclusively or extensively rather today. Alamode. Alamode is providing appraisers great tools to get through this pandemic. One of them is their observation tool, which allows you to be able to send out a link to the homeowner who on their smartphone can take pictures, can give you feedback and information that will be helpful to you in producing credible appraisal reports during the pandemic in a safe and efficient manner. It's Alamode. Check them out. Go to alamode.com or 800-ALAMODE. DataMaster, of course, is helping us with, as we talked about, the record-breaking months that we've had. Lots of volume going through our business. And we want it to be right, and we want it to be fast and efficient. And DataMaster saves us 45 minutes on every report. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com. Once again, I'm going to give you that address. It is datamasterusa.com. Finally, we're sponsored by Working RE Magazine, where I go to get great information about the appraisal world, about my profession, about my chosen career. Folks, they have a free email that goes out on a regular. I got one this morning. In fact, it was on Fannie Mae. Thank you, Working RE. WorkingRE.com is where you sign up for that free newsletter. WorkingRE.com. All right, folks, welcome back to the program. We're talking about extraordinary assumptions today, and are they allowed? And the answer, as far as my understanding, is USPAP does allow extraordinary assumptions. In fact, just recently, within the last couple of years, USPAP deleted the assumption definition. Okay, you remember the first part of USPAP, there are a bunch of definitions, right? They'll give you a word or phrase, and then they'll define them as per USPAP. Well, there used to be a definition of assumption. They took that out, and the reason that was given was because a lot of what we do is just assumed, and you don't have to define what an assumption is. Okay, that was the reason that I understand. They did, however, put the definition extraordinary assumption in. Okay, I'm going to read to you that definition. Now, I'm reading from 2018-2019 USPAP, so I don't have the 2020 and 2021 in front of me, but I don't think this has changed. This is from line number 118. Extraordinary assumption and an assignment-specific assumption as of the effective date regarding uncertain information used in an analysis, which, if found to be false, could alter the appraiser's opinion or conclusion. Well, Dustin, that sounds exactly like what I'm doing and what you should have done with that home desktop, the 1004 desktop that you talked about. Why can't you just make an assumption? Listen again, I'm going to read to you this assumption. Okay, remember, here's the story. We don't know the interior condition. We don't know the interior information. Okay? Extraordinary assumption, definition, an assignment-specific assumption as of the effective date regarding uncertain information used in an analysis which, if found to be false, could alter the appraiser's opinions or conclusions. Folks, that sounds like a pretty good definition of something I could have done. And the answer is yes. According to USPAP, I could have done that. I could have made an assumption about the interior condition of that home. And I could have completed my valuation exercises with regard to that quote-unquote information. And maybe it's in poor condition, but I'm going to value it as if, because I'm making an extraordinary assumption, as if it's in average condition. Here's the problem. According to USPAP, I would not be wrong for doing that. According to the GSEs, Fannie, Freddie, and the like, it's not allowed. That is a scope of work boundary that they won't allow. So folks, right now during this pandemic, if you are making extraordinary assumptions in your reports, according to Fannie and Freddie, you're doing it wrong. I'm sorry. Now, what do you do? Now, folks, I know many appraisers, some of them very well, who are using extraordinary assumptions anyway. That's got to be a choice you make. But just know that whatever choice you make comes consequences. Here's a question. Well, Dustin, what if the client comes back like yours did and said, no, we want you to make an extraordinary assumption? That's who you're working for, right? I guess. But folks, who is that ultimately going to be sold to? Just because someone at the GSEs doesn't understand the rule, okay, it's a little different. The rule doesn't mean that you should proceed because, quote unquote, they told you so. It is your responsibility to not be ignorant. It is your responsibility to understand what's allowed and what's not, and be able to proceed with caution. It's in your best interest to do so. And my understanding is that the GSEs do not allow. In fact, let me just read to you. This is from a COVID-19 FAQ. This is a selling guide from Fannie Mae, and there were some FAQs. I'm going to give you a date here. Published April 1st, 2020. Okay? And if you skip down to number 31, what if adequate information is not available for the appraisal? Here's the answer. Again, this is from Fannie Mae. Appraisers may use information in MLS, reach out to the broker, homeowner, public records, and or other online tools such as satellite imagery and street views to obtain the necessary property information. A good faith effort should be used to provide information that the appraiser believes is reasonable. If adequate information about the subject property is not available, the mortgage will not be eligible for sale to us until the appraiser has sufficient information to complete the desktop appraisal or an appraisal with an extraordinary assumption. Okay? Now, you might misread that and say that you can do an appraisal with an extraordinary assumption. No, it says that you can do an extraordinary assumption, but it's not eligible for sale until the appraiser has sufficient information to complete it. Folks, that's my understanding. Now, let me go down the page just a little bit and just share with you the answer to the question that I teased before the break. So Dustin, okay, fine. What if you can't find adequate information? They've ordered a desktop. Can you just drive past the property and say, look, every other home in the neighborhood is average, right? I'm assuming, and I've been in many of these homes and they're pretty average. I'm just going to assume that the subject average as well. Careful. Number 40, must a desktop appraisal or exterior only inspection appraisal report be submitted subject to an extraordinary assumption? In other words, the question on the table, folks, is can you turn in an appraisal subject to an extraordinary assumption when it comes to GSEs? The revised scope of work and certification removes the requirement for the appraisal to be submitted subject to an extraordinary assumption. If adequate information about the subject property is not available from a credible source, then the desktop or exterior only inspection appraisal is not, ready, acceptable. I'm just reading from the page, folks. Appraisers must have data sources they consider reliable. The assumption that the data sources are correct is not considered an extraordinary assumption. There you go. So extraordinary assumptions are allowed. There's some exceptions made, but when it comes to credible information that make the report, that are absolutely essential to giving a credible, reliable appraisal report, you've got to have it, folks. That's it. You've got to have it. Now, what you do with your business decision has got to be yours. Okay. Remember, this information can come from a great number of sources: brokers, real estate agents, the homeowner themselves. Okay. As long as you, the professional, deem it credible, okay, and you feel like you can support that if it ever came into question, then you're probably okay. Just be careful out there, folks. There's a lot of confusion going on. I get it. I feel it, right? Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh my gosh, how am I going to keep all of this straight? How am I going to keep myself safe? Folks, stay here, stay tuned. We will try. And the information that is available, of course, on my All-Star team is great. I mean, several times a day, people are posting questions like these and getting information and answers back in a non-threatening, non-cynical way. We don't allow that in our group at all. None. You're going to be negative. You're going to that's a stupid question. Guess what? You're gone. We don't allow that. You get nothing but great information and support from like-minded appraisers. And right now, it is absolutely free. You can jump on my website, theappraisercoach.com, go to memberships, sign up for the All-Star team, and use the coupon code FREE30ALLSTAR. That's the number 30, FREE30ALLSTAR.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
Sponsored by Working RE Magazine. Working RE is where I go to get a great deal of it. Sorry,